Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's 10:15 p.m. on the 17th of November. Boy, this month's going by super quick. I don't know if you folks follow the news, but I'm not even sure this would be international news. But there's really heavy rains. I mean, it's the rain season and everything, and I don't want to, you know, make this sound like it's more than it is or anything like that. Let me get my mic volume. Yeah, there we go. Because it's normal for heavy rains in November, but they have flooding in Alajuela and San Jose, as I said one podcast ago, and the grandchildren have been here. It'll be like a full week. I think they're staying till Wednesday. It's hard to get work done, man. Oh my God, holy cow. I go to the back, they come to the back. I come to the front, they come to the front. And I mean, I usually have like 45 minutes or so, but it's nice to have them here. I mean, they're so full of energy. It's amazing, you know. Kids are amazing, you know. It makes you think about a lot of things when you're around kids all the time. And, you know, with the things we talk about here on the Talamanca Review, you think about other stuff too, right? Like, you know, who or what could harm a child? I mean, that's not a human being as far as I'm concerned. I should remember what Corinne Hustebot taught me, though, that, you know, it's there is a psychology to it, to the serial killer and everything, but at a certain point it just goes to evil. But it's just adorable. I'm still getting my head around getting called abuelo, and grandfather, grandfather, abuelo, 58 years old. Well, I don't really have anything planned for tonight. That's why I titled the podcast A Whole Lot of Nothing. So here we go with a whole lot of nothing. A lot of times when I don't have a deliberate agenda, I end up doing a pretty good podcast because I use it as an opportunity to tie together a lot of things. And I use it as an opportunity to give a fuller answer to some of the comments. And, you know, especially some of the well thought out comments and stuff like that, which I generally get some pretty well thought out comments. And, you know, there was a wonderful comment by Jody about how psychic insight at a right moment to be able to help somebody could be very beneficial. And I guess that's just an example of what I would call semantics, because I call that divine intuition. And divine intuition is knowing something you shouldn't know. Psychic it's something else entirely, right? It's and when you've met some real unbelievable psychics, you see the difference right away, right? And you know, part of my concern is that, you know, these abilities are really touted in the New Age movement, and Gaia is another example of it. You know, the Gaia network that does all the so-called spiritual broadcasting, but I think it's mainly Luciferian. And that is, I think, maybe something that I could really nail down tonight, because it's a little bit amorphous. Before I get to that, I just want to mention what are the words I'm looking for here? I know that some of you are living in very dire circumstances. I suppose you could say that those dire circumstances are conceptual, because you still have a roof, you still have a bed, you still have food. And in my travels through this world, I define dire circumstances as something else. But it's an interesting opportunity to point out how so many of the things that we consider serious in the West are just conceptually serious, meaning that they're just in our head. True, if certain patterns persist, they will affect future generations, but nobody knows the future. That's the whole point, you know. It is true that our lives are written before we come in. And part of the rule set down here is that you have to live within the rule set. And the only breaking of that rule set that is permissible is accorded with your ability to commiserate with the divine, the creator, the be-all and end-all. And that's the only thing. And that relationship is almost always done by faith. But it can be a very informed faith at a certain point. It'll never be a science. It'll never be a calculus. It'll never be something that can be repeated. Okay? It may surprise you to know that a miracle is a mental act, not a spiritual act. Okay? Not many people know that a miracle is actually the product of a highly developed mind. Cosmic consciousness is Luciferianism. Cosmic consciousness can be benign or malignant. Therefore, what we call Lucifer can be benign or malignant, because that consciousness and that expression exists within the duality of the system. At a certain point, the system goes into singularity. And at that point, there's not a whole lot of thinking. It's just direct experience, and very simple and very straightforward. And the expression of that is the fact that you still exist in a body, but your consciousness can go there, and you become like the equivalent of a cell tower, broadcasting that frequency to everything around you. And if you're living in the right culture, the people will recognize it, and you'll be either celebrated, or if you're living in the wrong culture, you'll be incarcerated and killed, depending on where you are. Because, broadcasting that frequency could be problematic in certain places. So the Luciferian consciousness is dual. Lucifer has many gifts to offer the human race. Cosmic consciousness has many gifts to offer the human race. But it's not the be-all and end-all. You know, being a highly accomplished Vedic yogi is not the be-all and end-all. That's cosmic consciousness. So Sadhguru is within Luciferian consciousness. Now, because I'm using Western language, please do not allow yourself to immediately affix a negativity to it. Okay, so what I'm doing, and one of the unique abilities I have because of the course of study I've undertaken in my life voluntarily, is to draw these ley lines between the Eastern teachings and the Western teachings. And so what we know about Luciferianism is pretty much wrong in the West. What we know about Satanism is pretty much wrong. Okay? There's so many things that I say on the Telemanca Review that run contrary to what other people are teaching, but those people are just, for the most part, they're coming off of books. Okay? And most of those books I've read myself. So, I have one friend who always wants me to look at Gnostic material. And I said, well, what more is there for me to learn? I read the Nag Hammadi library twice in my early 20s. I studied it. I spent an entire summer studying the Nag Hammadi library. My favorite book in the Nag Hammadi library is Thunder, Perfect Voice. Look it up. You can probably find it online. It's interesting, the Nag Hammadi library, but it's highly encrypted. And encrypted esoterica is going to be going away pretty soon. Everything has to be literal now for it to have any meaning. This is what technology has done. This is I guess you could say, the spiritual favor that technology has done for us, is that it has forced everything to become literal. And therefore, those who can literalize things and decrypt them from mythology are the new storytellers, because they're just the old stories explained. Okay? Now, this is not to say that there isn't value in mythology, but the mythologies that we're dealing, well, maybe there isn't anymore. I think that certainly our conception of reality has been surpassed quite literally with calculus and higher mathematics and relational theories and physics and the physical sciences. So we're going into a whole new age now, and make no mistake about it, we're definitely going to go into this new age. What needs to change is human consciousness, the way we participate in it. Okay? Because we have to have the inner understanding of the things that we've proved outwardly. And the inner and the outer have to be in sync for us to make this leap forward. That's what we're going through now. That's what we're going through now. So Luciferianism is a very high state of consciousness. It's like I said, it's the same thing as cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness is an understanding and a commiseration with the universal mind. And this opens up a deep understanding of all the systems of the body, the nervous systems, the spinal energies, the thinking processes, and where thoughts come from, and how they interact with the realities outside of us. Time is understood by somebody with cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness breaks the constraints of time, so it goes beyond time. Certainly, cosmic consciousness is far above the astral plane, which is where all the spooky stuff is, which I've spoken about on the Telemancer Review quite a bit, the stuff that scares people. It's beyond all of this stuff. Cosmic consciousness is the metapsychology of the human race. It's the psychology of both the body, the mind, and the spirit that lives within the body and the mind in the body, the brain. So that's what cosmic consciousness is. And it's generally been achieved through an inner practice. Okay, so it seems spiritual because the techniques to get to it are very similar. Okay? Buddhism, for the most part, is an expression of causal consciousness. So Buddhism is to get you beyond the astral. And if you can get beyond the astral, you don't have to reincarnate here. That's my understanding anyways. If somebody thinks different, leave a comment, okay? So it's a frightening time, and it's a time where a lot of people are disturbed and frightened because their understanding and conception of reality is being turned over like an apple cart. But that's part of what happens down here. That's part of what being human is all about. You have to be prepared for these sorts of things because there's no guarantee of stability down here. You know, now you understand the old Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. I never really understood that when I was younger, but I do now. You know, the Chinese believe it's a curse to live in rapidly moving and dynamic times like this. They prefer, in the Taoist methodology, in the Taoist and Confucian and Buddhist way of life, they prefer quiet consistency. And that's why Chinese people are so successful at work, because they can turn their work into a meditative or spiritual exercise, which is what they're doing, whether they're running a laundromat or a dry cleaner or whatever. And that's why they're so successful. The general state of mind that they've cultivated is really conducive to these things. Now, I don't know how much of it remains. I think epigenetically it would have survived the Cultural Revolution. I don't think you could kill that. I mean, it's like a couple millennia that's been drilled into the Chinese people, so I don't think Mao was able to eradicate it. And although he probably did make a dent in it, right? There's another example of somebody in supreme arrogance thinking they have the right through violence to change something that dramatically overnight, right? Mao Zedong was another classic example of that. So we know that it's not just cultural, right? We know it's not just us in the West who do that. Everybody does it. And we've had a lot of really good insights on the Talamanca review. The one about the present state of technology, and what we know has been invented and what is capable of being mass produced, and the state of economy we persist at, I think it's fairly easy to conclude that whatever kind of a control system we're in, it's global, and that the wars are some form of theater. I don't think that's a big stretch after I explained the thorium reactor and the water engine. I could probably, with a little bit of research, come up with a half dozen more examples, but the more you look at the situation we're living in, it's all a lie. It's all a farce. It's all just theater. And everybody is just an actor playing a role based on their consciousness and their ability to comprehend the reality they're living in, which historically has been very low, right? Now, what's unique about the time we're living in now is we're being set up for a big, big pivot and a big, big change. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I'm not sure anybody is completely in control of it. I think part of it is just celestial, meaning the turning of the heavenly bodies, if you will, what some people call astrology. But my astrology would include even the turning of the solar system in the galaxy, and even the turning of the galaxy in the universe, because everything, it's a bunch of interconnected spirals like a clock. Everything we create, by the way, is a metaphor for the universe, because it can't exist unless it exists above, right? It's just the way this place works. The yogis aren't wrong about that. That's a divination you get with cosmic consciousness. And it's correct, because cosmic consciousness is a valid perception. What is different about God consciousness is that it is the complete surrender to the love and presence of your true being, which is the spark of God that's in you. So you express, or you become the expression only of the divine within you. Very few people achieve this in a lifetime. Very few people. It's interesting to me that we've the way we culture and the way we memorialize and worship certain of these people, though, but not the concept itself of the divine consciousness. We'd rather worship somebody who had it in the past than try to pursue it ourselves. Very strange thing, the way human beings work, I think we've been conditioned, or we've been created in many ways socially to be slaves, or to think like slaves. Best life you can possibly have is one in which you're completely free, or as free as a human being can be. Which is why I chose the life I chose. And I have no regrets. Well, my intuition wants me to go on to Trump. I don't know. It just starts with a picture in my forehead. That's how the podcast goes. So what should I talk about next? And Trump just keeps popping up. Very, very curious persona. Very, very curious person. Very unique in many ways, in my opinion. Fits in with many circles. How many people do you know that like that? Donald Trump can fit in with the elites, and he has. I think he's done some pretty, or been around the spooky stuff. I think Ivanka was sacrificed, his wife, the mother of his children. I think she probably went willingly. So there was that. Nobody's really made the connection of that. I think when it happened, a few people might have spoken about it. Unlike the elites, Trump is extremely comfortable around common people, and he's not being insincere. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had absolute contempt for common people. They were true elitists. When you hear some of the interviews of the people, the young girls who lived with them, the hierarchy inside that island was unbelievable. You know? And extremely racist. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, they were Jewish supremacists. And in my opinion, I agree with Dan Blitzkier. He just did an interview with Piers Morgan. I think the only real form of functioning elitism on the planet is, in fact, Jewish elitism, Jewish supremacy. I think that's what we're involved in now. I think Trump is going to play a hand in it. But there's a difference between supremacy and meritocracy. Okay? Supremacy, as I understand it, is where you want to be better than everybody else, but really you're not, or you haven't earned it. It's a curious thing, I have to now admit, but in many ways, the Jews have earned the right to own the position they own. Now you can say, well, Bruce, they're brutal, they're deceptive, they've caused many wars, they've killed many people, they've genocided millions of Russians, millions of Ukrainians in the Holodomor, a million Armenian Christians in the Turkish genocide. The Turkish Jews did that. Yeah. All true. All true. Napoleon killed a lot of people. There's no anti-Napoleon sentiment in the world like there's anti-Semitism. Genghis Khan killed a lot of people. There's no anti-Mongolian sentiment. You never hear somebody stop your virulent anti-Mongolianism, do you? The United States has killed a lot of people. Oh, but Bruce, they were working under the control, under Jewish controllers. Yeah, that might be a bit specious. I'll definitely give you that the last 25 years or so have been an all APAC all the time. I'll definitely give you that the 7 years in 7 countries in 7 years plan that got us into the Middle East mess was cooked up by Jews in the State Department. The white papers were all written by Jews. Victoria Nuland and her aggression toward Ukraine, absolutely Jewish. But the more I think about it, I find that I have to admit that the thing of anti-Semitism does exist. Okay? Very weird thing for you to hear me say on the Telemanker Review, but it's true. And if there's one virtue I want to maintain on this show, it's honesty. The bloodletting, a lot of this I was forced to think about by a long email my friend Greg wrote me. That bloodletting and blood ritual, it's popped up in a number of cultures. It's not just the Jews. Before Buddha came, Hinduism was steeped in animal sacrifices as well. Steeped in animal sacrifices and animal blood before Buddha came. Buddha was like the avatar of the East. Came to give a new message, a new way of doing things. What about the Aztecs? Anybody ever see the movie Apocalypto by Mel Gibson? Masterpiece. Masterpiece. Hardly any dialogue, and one of the most gripping movies you'll ever see in your life. It's just about a tribe that gets kidnapped by the Aztecs. Aztec warriors sneak into their village in the morning in the rainforest, strap them all up in neck harnesses, and bind their hands and walk them back to the great Aztec city, where they're doing sacrifices at the lunar eclipse, and, stabbing people and pulling their hearts out and throwing them down the steep steps of those pyramids. And there are those pyramids again. The Jews did not teach the Aztecs to do that. There's something in here with us, There's something in this psychosphere we live in, planet Earth. There's a spiritual force that can infect people and cultures. I'd say it's absolutely dark, negative, no doubt about it. Absolutely dark and negative. Terrifying. And it infects entire peoples. They say that Genghis Khan, while he was alive, killed 1 in every 10 people on the planet. 10% of the entire world population was killed by the Mongol hordes. That's legendary. Absolutely legendary. That would be like killing 1 billion people now. I mean, just think about that. It's mind-boggling. So anti-Semitism exists. But in many ways it's justified. I'll bet you didn't see that coming. You know, sometimes my best thoughts will just come out of nowhere. Or I'll be doing something. Today I was taking apart a computer. With the little screwdrivers, and I was trying to change a hard drive. It didn't work. My computer won't boot now. If anybody knows what's going on there, please leave a comment. It's a gaming computer, one of the ones that are easiest to work on, and I tried the same thing. It could be a bad hard drive, I don't know. I was just doing my work, you know, and something kept coming up in my mind, you know. Now, when things keep coming back to your consciousness, you should pay attention to them, because there's usually a message there. Just like when a dream keeps repeating, you should pay attention to it. Now, sometimes it can just be something negative, you know, screwing with you or something. But what kept coming to my mind was the first statement by Trump's appointee to the United Nations. And let me just get her name here real quick for you. This will just take a sec, folks, sorry. I'm never really prepared for these things before the podcast starts. I turn that off. Oh, come on, Bruce. I just accidentally shut down. There we go. Okay. Trump appointment to UN. And I might actually find the clip. It's only a minute. But it's worth listening to. And I'll point out why. And Elise Stefanik is her name, and she's Jewish, obviously. A lot of Jews, you know, or Christian Zionists, hardcore Christian Zionists like Mark Rubio for Secretary of State, which is like crazy. But in her first statement, Elise said something very, very interesting. No, I'm not going to be able to find it, and I don't want to waste your time, okay? And my memory is good enough that I won't muck this up. I'll be paraphrasing, but there will be no malignment of her intent. She said, and I quote, "America is going to live by the vision or the goals of the founding fathers in Washington, which were religious pluralism. And we are going to absolutely crush anti-Semitism domestically." And she made another comment referring to the Jews as God's chosen people. And generally, people make their worst mistakes when they get arrogant. Any homicide detective will tell you. Okay? So they catch the serial killers when the serial killer reaches the arrogance that they're never going to get caught. Okay? And that's an interesting analogy for me to make given the topic I'm on. But first of all, the irony of the statement and why I think anti-Semitism is valid, okay, and why I think if you're not a little bit anti-Semitic and you're a Gentile, you're just not thinking clearly, okay? You just haven't thought it through. You've been conditioned not to allow yourself to think about it, and you're not thinking about it clearly. Well, the Jews themselves don't believe in religious pluralism. And if you believe in religious pluralism, you would have to hang up the idea that you're God's chosen people, because you would have to, by admitting that a plurality of religions is the way to go in a society, you're tacitly saying, or you're being hypocritical, you're tacitly saying that God created many roads back to him. And they were formed by cultures and insights within those cultures and great leaps forward in the consciousness, and certain gifted teachers came to those cultures. The gifted shaman that guided the tribal cultures. The benign Egyptian pharaohs before they went corrupt. It was a very spiritually rich culture before it became steeped in black magic. The Buddha, the Vedics, the oldest scripture and path back to God on the planet. The Vedic scriptures, the Upanishads, the Sanskrit language. All of these things. This is what religious plurality means. And I know because I'm a big believer in religious plurality. I have benefited tremendously by studying many religions. And because what it does ultimately is it literalizes your understanding of God by listening to 3, 4, 5 different interpretations of it and how to get God back in your life. Whether it be the stillness and contemplation of the Eastern systems, the prayer and the good public service in the Abrahamic systems, which is valid. This is what religious pluralism is. What else could it be? So how could you stand at a podium and say that you're going to fight for religious pluralism, or you're going to reinstate religious pluralism by crushing anti-Semitism, and then in the same statement, I don't say the same breath because I think she stopped to take a breath, but in the same statement say that the Jews are God's chosen people? It contradicts the idea that you believe in religious pluralism. Okay? And this is why I think the Jews are being set up. Okay? And I do think they're being set up. And first of all, let me say, I'll be very careful with my words because this is a very sensitive topic now. I mean, somebody could pull this podcast in a year and a half into the Trump administration and have me prosecuted for anti-Semitism, and there would go my fresh pineapple and my fresh eggs and my mountain cheese and my Starlink. But most importantly, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, including the Jews. And I know that sounds strange given that I'm talking about the legitimacy of anti-Semitism, but look, I'm going to make my case. If you're a Gentile and you're not even a little bit anti-Semitic, it's because you haven't thought about it. Okay? I think they're being set up because by giving them everything they want, the schism in their position and the victim status they've always maintained is being eroded. And when they lose the victim status, people are going to rethink the whole situation because there's still a spell on it now. And when they rethink the whole situation, they're going to see all the lies and all the contradictions and all the bullshit. Okay? How can you be the per capita richest people in the it's not really per capita because they don't all live in one nation, okay? But I mean per capita by ethnicity or population or religious congregation, okay? How can you be the richest and most powerful people on the planet? And yes, I believe they're the richest and most powerful people on the planet now. And I say that because they're a consensus mind no matter where they live. And they're all working to a common goal. And you can see it all lining up now. You've got Milei in Argentina, who, by the way, was born Roman Catholic and is converting to Chabad Lubavitch. And, you know, maybe I should even change my tact a little bit on this podcast tonight and constrict myself down to Orthodox Judaism. Like, if you're not a little bit anti-Semitic toward Orthodox Judaism, you haven't thought this through. And I could even go into a tighter concentric circle if I wanted to be really fancy and say, if not a little bit anti-Semitic toward Chabad Lubavitch, you haven't thought it through. Okay? Because I got to remember all the time when I'm speaking that there's all kinds of Reform and liberal Jews out there now that are practicing their Torah in a modern way and trying to be of service to God as they understand God, trying to do mitzvahs, which are, you know, blessings or good deeds for their community and their neighbors. And look, man, they're really good people. Okay? Really good people. So much as the Jews contribute a lot to society, you know, just, you know, they get good educations, they produce surgeons, doctors, they make advancements in medicine. Yeah, the medical system is completely corrupt. But in the world we live in right now, you know, they do really good things. And still, I say, if you're not a little bit anti-Semitic, you haven't thought it through. Okay? And Elise Stefanik just gives it up. In defense of religious pluralism, we're going to crush anti-Semitism and create a safe living space for God's chosen people. I mean, somebody should have proofed that speech before she read it. Right? And then you got all this, you know, not Macron, but the guy right under him. Like in France, they have like a president and a prime minister. And Macron is the president, and the new prime minister is a young Jewish guy. Like, he's only like 36 or 37 years old. I don't know if you guys saw the swearing-in ceremony, but in French custom, all the cabinet ministers or all the members of parliament, or whatever they call it in France, I'm not even sure. It's a parliamentary system. That comes from England. There's a ritual where they're all supposed to walk by and get their pictures are taken. And the new prime minister is standing there, and everybody, like all 300 or 400 of them, are supposed to shake his hand. And every single sitting member of their parliament would not shake his hand. They just walked by him, you know. But there you have another Jew placed in France. I don't know about Starmer in England. I don't know where the Jewish influence has always been very strong in England. They've controlled the inner city where the Bank of London is, which, by the way, has its own set of laws like Vatican City, right? And that's where all, like, you can get anything assayed and bought or sold there. Gold, diamonds, gems. You know, so there's that old wealth business that the Jews have been in for a long time. Not too many house builders in the Jewish world, you know. Not too many carpenters. I think Jesus might have been the last. But if you're not a little bit anti-Semitic, you're just not thinking about it. Okay? Because there is cause for alarm here. Okay? Boy, I didn't know this was going to come out when Trump flashed into my mind. Yeah. Yeah, so you got to wonder what it is that they're up to, you know? What it is that they're planning for this great turning of the world. And there's still all this unaccounted for stuff, right? I haven't heard anything in the incoming administration about getting to the bottom of the pandemic. I keep hearing China, 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 which is what he said the last time he was in office, but I haven't heard Pfizer, 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 Moderna, 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 AstraZeneca, AstraZeneca, AstraZeneca. Okay? Modern pharmacology, for your information, was pretty much created by the Germans. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, but Hitler was a drug freak. Always on drugs, man. You know, he was a drug freak. For those of you who watched Breaking Bad, I'll bet you Walter White did not make crystal meth as pure as the Nazi scientists did, like 80 years ago. You know, but most of the pharma companies now are Jewish. Like when you look at the board of directors in the United States for all these companies, they're all Jewish. And I don't care what you say, and you know, this is the topic I have to dance around, folks, right? Because I like broadcasting on YouTube. But I mean, what I'm getting at is this. I don't see any indication from the Trump administration that they're going to get to the bottom of that. That I think is the greatest crime against humanity in the history of the recorded history of the human race, going right back to the Romans. When you start to understand the totality of what was done, it is ghastly, ghastly. It's the kind of things that make demons step forward and say, "Will you write a book with us? We don't want to get blamed for this." That's how ghastly it is. Okay? And then there's this non-stop UFO thing, which is becoming like the biggest distraction out there now. And I've seen UFOs. I've been contacted by UFOs. Not the usual ones either, not like Nordics or Pleiadians or Andromedans like Alex Collier or anything like that, nor Greys. I've been around the gray energy. It was around me when I was working on Stardust Ranch, but it was quite foul too, by the way. It's a very foul energy. Foul. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, I don't know, like rotting vegetation or something. Just foul. I had the portal opening up. Crazy shit I've been through in the last 5 years. Sometimes I forget how much I've been through in the last 5 years. And it never really stops, right? Now I've got all the fourth dimensional creatures on the mountain interacting with me now. Well, the duende at least. And then you have to ask yourself, you know, what is the connection between all of this stuff? You know, the Jewish religion, the Vatican, you know, the Pope, I think it was it Benedict? John Paul? I can't remember which Pope said it, but he said, yes, extraterrestrials are here, and we will have the privilege of baptizing our extraterrestrial brethren, you know, to join the Jesus system, you know? Now, you know my take. Now, my take is that it's all this is all on the fourth dimension. And it's like you read books about Africa your whole life. Nobody's ever been to Africa. You've never seen Africa. You've never seen a picture of Africa. You've never seen a film of Africa. You've only read the testimony of people who've been to Africa. And there's like, you know, this is my analogy for the human beings trying to understand the fourth dimension. And then somebody will say, well, I've studied everything there is to know about Africa, and there's no zebras there. Because the literature they read, the person who was there never saw zebras. You know. Well, there's no extraterrestrials, Bruce. They're all angels and demons. Because the stuff I read said they're angels and demons. You know? Or there's no angels and demons, it's all extraterrestrials. How about there's both? How about all conditions are true? That, in the ocean there are great white sharks and there are tiger sharks, not just one or the other. There are tunas, there are whales, And I guess what's going on now is the last-ditch attempt to try to control the human race and manage the incoming energy and the growth in consciousness. And to try and get it nailed down, and if they can't get it nailed down, kill a bunch of us, because that's the only recourse to maintain control over this dimension. So are we really finally coming to the end of the control system that's been here for, I'd say it's hundreds of thousands of years now, maybe longer. If the Akashic record readings in the book I wrote are correct, I mean, the war for this planet and the mischief on this planet goes back 55 million years. That's quite a chunk of time. It's like a wink for God, for the Creator. It's like an eye blink for the Creator. It's nothing. Okay? But for us, down here, it's a long time. It's almost unimaginable. It would encompass everything. The dinosaurs, like everything, right? But even that's a lie. Like literally everything we've been told is a lie. Maybe everything we're going through now is just a direct confrontation with reality. And maybe it's going to be so shocking, people are just going to pass out. And it's going to be like they're waking up from a dream. But this Trump thing mystifies me. And it mystifies me because the one thing I know for sure is he's not a reptilian. And most other people are in power. Their astral association is reptilian. You could say demonic if you want. And he's not. But he gets along with them. Right? I've only met a couple people in my life that can do that. Right? Most people, they can't accommodate differing vibrations to that degree. Most people, when they're around the reptilian energy, they feel physically ill. Right? Not Trump. Anyways, this is a whole lot of nothing tonight. I'm just a guy speculating on a hypothesis is all I know. I don't know nothing. But it's fun to think about out loud. Very fun to think about. And at the center of it all are the Jews. And why? Well, I'm going to stop all the suspense and I'm going to tell you. And I'm just going to keep repeating this until I force you to think about it, okay? Most of the megalithic architecture on the planet is reptilian. Okay? Now this is something you could not possibly know unless you could deduce it yourself through direct perception. Nobody else really gets it right. Michael Tellinger doesn't get it right. All these whack jobs who write about the pyramids don't get it right. They don't. It's reptilian. Now, most of this architecture is non-functioning now at an energetic level. It doesn't have. There's a few places in the world where the megalithic sites still do operate. Now, what happens at a place like this? Well, I can tell you that rocks grow. Hand to God. I'm telling rocks grow. Okay? I know this because it's documented in the work done on Romania. Romania is a very fascinating country, by the way. A lot of the old, you see, there's a certain relationship you can have with land in which life becomes magical. And it's not, has nothing to do with reptilians or anything like that. It just is what it is. The Quebecers here, the natives, they have it. I have it to a lesser degree because I'm half in their world and half still in the modern world. I got another Starlink connection coming in, for crying out loud. That's been delayed. Now they're telling me it's going to come in between the 22nd and the 26th of November. Thank you very much. It's not Elon Musk's fault. It's the transportation system in Costa Rica, the delivery system in Costa Rica. But this temple, and I encourage you to do a little bit of research into it because it's a fascinating topic. If you can find a YouTube video on how the temple is going to be, the new third temple is going to be built, because there's all these super weird rules they have to follow. Like the stones can't be cut with a saw. Okay, now there was a way they did it in the past, but they can't do it that way because it involved an organic entity, a worm that, anyways, it's a long story. But after rabbinical council and consideration amongst the rabbis, they believe they can do it with lasers now without breaking the laws of their God, which of course is not God, which is another reason that a little bit of anti-Semitism should be normal. Because whatever they're worshiping, the one thing I'll tell you is it's not God, but it's real. But it's not God. God doesn't do stuff like that. God makes sure the bees are working. God makes sure the birds are working, the rivers, the winds, the planet, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, the subtler dimensions above the physical. God maintains all of that. But God does not give magical directions on how to build architecture to a specific people and says, I've chosen you above all else. That God does not do. And that alone is cause for a little bit of anti-Semitism, which is a very bold thing to say publicly on a recording as we go into the next 4 years of the Crush Anti-Semitism Trump platform. And remember, I'm a Trump supporter over Harris. In any other time, no. But over Harris, yes. So it's very fascinating when you study how this temple is built. Now, what can we deduce? That this is somehow related to the old magical buildings of old. The way the old Hindu temple, like even Sadhguru says they can't even build the temples anymore. They've lost the ability, the consciousness, or whatever went into the way they used to build the magical Hindu temples. Okay? They can still do the lingas and stuff. Linga is basic Rosicrucian alchemistry, okay? There's just a few things you have to have. You have to have salt. You have to have a little bit of mercury. You have to, and anyways. And to sit in front of a consecrated linga can depossess people as well. And it can calm minds, cure mental illness, everything. Very interesting stuff. But what the Jews are going to do is they're going to take a crack at this old world magical power-based architecture. And what makes this temple even more unique is its central focus is blood offerings. That's all I got for tonight. It's a whole lot of nothing, but I'll see you again tomorrow. And I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. Peace out.